Number 1. Alpha dominance. Dogs need an alpha, a dominant pack leader who establishes hierarchy through force and control. Pet store training manuals from the 1970s through 2015 taught it as fundamental canine psychology. Dog training certification programs built entire curricula around dominance-based methods. The claim has shaped how millions of owners interact with their dogs for over half a century. But dogs don't organize into rigid dominance hierarchies requiring alpha leadership. The concept was based on flawed research that the original scientist formally retracted. The theory seemed scientifically authoritative. Animal behaviorist Rudolf Schenkel published a landmark 1947 study observing captive wolves at the Basel Zoo in Switzerland. He documented aggressive competition for resources among unrelated wolves confined together, describing an alpha wolf maintaining control through dominance displays and physical force. The study appeared methodologically sound, direct behavioral observation producing clear hierarchical patterns. Canine behavior textbooks from 1950 through 1995 extrapolated these findings to domestic dogs, stating that owners must establish alpha status to prevent behavioral problems. The American Kennel Club's 1978 training guidelines recommended dominance exercises, including alpha rolls, forcing dogs onto their backs to simulate submission. The framework dominated professional training for decades, appearing to explain everything from leash pulling to aggression. Track this back to its source and you'll find a clear culprit. But the persistence, that's systemic. Schenkel's study observed unrelated wolves forced into artificial captivity, a scenario never occurring in wild wolf ecology. The aggressive competition resulted from the unnatural social environment, not natural pack structure. Captivity created the hierarchy researchers then generalized to all canine behavior. But commercial interests amplified the myth aggressively. The US dog training industry generated $2.1 billion in revenue by 2000, with dominance-based methods forming the core of best-selling training books and television programs. Cesar Millan's Dog Whisperer, premiering in 2004 and emphasizing calm assertive energy and pack leadership, attracted 11 million viewers at its peak. When wildlife biologist Dr. L. David Meck, who had popularized the alpha concept in his own 1970 book, published a formal correction in 1999 explaining that wild wolf packs are family units led by breeding pairs, not dominance hierarchies. His retraction appeared in the Canadian Journal of Zoology, but never reached mainstream training materials. PetSmart training programs continued teaching alpha-based methods through 2012. As of 2023, training books emphasizing dominance theory remain bestsellers on Amazon, and certification programs at 14 US training academies still include dominance hierarchy modules. Here's what the actual research shows. Dr. Meck's 1999 study of wild wolf packs on Ellesmere Island documented family structures where parents naturally lead offspring. No fighting for dominance, no alpha roles, no hierarchy enforcement through aggression. Dr. Karen Overall at the University of Pennsylvania demonstrated in 2007 that dominance-based training methods increase aggression and anxiety in dogs rather than reducing behavioral problems. The American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior issued a position statement in 2008 explicitly rejecting dominance theory and recommending positive reinforcement methods. Canine behaviorists now recognize that domestic dogs form flexible social relationships based on resource value and individual temperament, not rigid hierarchies. Yet the Association of Professional Dog Trainers didn't update its official guidelines to reflect this science until 2016. The evidence has been publicly available since 1999. This matters because millions of dogs experience punishment-based training rooted in a theory formally retracted 25 years ago by the researcher who popularized it. When pet industry training standards lag a quarter century behind the scientific correction, we're teaching owners to use methods that increase the behavioral problems they're meant to solve. And this same pattern of observational oversimplification becoming accepted fact is exactly what happened with myth number 2. But that behavioral misinterpretation affects every dog owner who's ever watched their pet's tail. Number 2. Tail wagging. A wagging tail means a happy dog. Children's books have illustrated it for generations. Veterinary clinic pamphlets reassure clients that tail wagging indicates positive emotional states. The interpretation appears in dog care guides from the 1960s through present day. But tail wagging is context-dependent communication that can signal happiness, arousal, anxiety, or aggression. The direction, speed, and height of the wag carry distinct meanings that simple wagging equals happiness completely misses. The interpretations seemed intuitively obvious. Early dog behavior literature in the 1950s and 1960s observed that dogs frequently wag tails during positive social interactions, greeting owners, anticipating meals, Playing with other dogs. The correlation appeared straightforward. Wagging occurred during pleasant experiences. Therefore, wagging signaled pleasure. Popular dog care books like Clarence Pfaffenberger's The New Knowledge of Dog Behavior, 1963, and Konrad Lorenz's Man Meets Dog, 1954, describe tail wagging as an indicator of friendly intentions and positive affect. Humane societies and veterinary clinics adopted this simplified interpretation in owner education materials throughout the 1970s and 1980s. The American Kennel Club's 1982 Complete Dog Book stated, "A wagging tail is the universal sign of canine happiness." The observation required no specialized equipment or controlled studies. It seemed self-evident from casual observation. The origin traces back further than you'd think, and the reason it survived is even more revealing. The happiness interpretation came from observing dogs in limited contexts, primarily friendly greetings and play. Early behaviorists lacked the methodological tools to analyze subtle variations in tail position, speed, and directional bias. Video analysis technology that could capture these nuances didn't become accessible for behavioral research until the 1990s. Educational material simplification reinforced the myth. Children's picture books illustrated happy dogs with wagging tails, creating early associations between the two concepts. By 1985, this simplified interpretation had saturated elementary science curricula and pet care literature aimed at general audiences. When research on tail wagging lateralization and contextual variation emerged in the 2000s, findings appeared in specialized journals like Current Biology and Animal Cognition, never penetrating mainstream pet care guides. The American Veterinary Medical Association's client education materials continued describing tail wagging as a happiness indicator through 2014. As of 2024, popular dog training apps, including Puppier and GoodPup, describe wagging tails as signs your dog is happy without mentioning context dependency. Here's what the actual research shows. Dr. Marcello Siniscalchi at the University of Bari demonstrated in 2007 that dogs wag tails more to the right when experiencing positive emotions and more to the left when experiencing negative emotions, reflecting lateralized brain hemisphere activation. Dr. Quaranta at the same institution confirmed in 2013 that dogs respond with increased heart rates and stress behaviors when observing left-biased tail wagging in other dogs, recognizing the negative emotional state. Dr. Tammy at the University of Lincoln documented in 2016 that tail wagging height, speed, and breadth all communicate distinct information. High, fast wagging can indicate arousal or potential aggression, while low, slow wagging often signals uncertainty or appeasement. Canine behavior specialists now recognize tail wagging as complex, context-dependent communication, requiring analysis of multiple factors. This matters because misreading tail wagging signals contributes to dog bite incidents. Children approach dogs displaying high, stiff, rapid wagging, interpreting it as friendliness when it signals arousal or potential aggression. When educational materials teach single-meaning interpretation of multidimensional signals, we're training people to ignore context that determines safety. And this same pattern of simplified behavioral explanation, persisting despite contradicting research, is exactly what happened with myth number 3. But that veterinary assumption has persisted longer than any dominance theory or tail interpretation. Number 3. Grass eating. Dogs eat grass when they're sick. It's self-medication to induce vomiting or settle upset stomachs. Veterinary advice columns have repeated it for decades. Pet care guides from the 1970s through 2010s presented it as instinctual healing behavior. The explanation appears in mainstream veterinary clinic handouts given to concerned owners. But grass eating is normal dietary behavior unrelated to illness in the vast majority of dogs. Most grass-eating dogs show no signs of illness before or after consumption. The assumption seemed logically sound. Veterinarians in the 1950s through 1970s observed that some dogs vomited after eating grass, and clients frequently reported grass consumption when dogs appeared unwell. Without controlled studies tracking healthy versus sick dogs, the correlation appeared causal. Dogs felt sick, ate grass to induce vomiting. Therefore, grass eating indicated illness. Early veterinary textbooks like Kirk's Current Veterinary Therapy, 1964 edition, described grass consumption as a purgative behavior dogs used to relieve gastrointestinal distress. The interpretation became standard veterinary guidance. The American Animal Hospital Association's 1975 client education materials stated, "Grass eating is your dog's way of treating an upset stomach." The explanation required no research. It appeared to emerge directly from clinical observation and evolutionary logic about animals self-medicating. So where did this myth originate, And why did it persist despite contradicting evidence? The claim originated from confirmation bias in veterinary observations. Veterinarians saw sick dogs in clinical settings and remembered when those dogs had eaten grass, but had no systematic data on how frequently healthy dogs engaged in the same behavior outside clinical contexts. The sick dog observations were salient. Routine grass consumption by healthy dogs went unrecorded. Veterinary training materials perpetuated the assumption across generations. Textbooks and clinical guidelines established in the 1960s continued through revised editions for decades without empirical validation. By 1990, the self-medication explanation had become conventional wisdom, repeated in veterinary schools despite absence of controlled studies testing the claim. When Dr. Benjamin Hart at UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine conducted the first systematic survey research on grass eating in 2008, findings appeared in Applied Animal Behavior Science, a specialized journal not included in most veterinary continuing education. General practice veterinary clinics continued distributing pamphlets describing grass consumption as illness response through 2016. As of 2024, the American Kennel Club's online health library still lists upset stomach as the primary reason dogs eat grass, though it now includes a caveat that research suggests otherwise. Here's what the actual research shows. Dr. Hart's 2008 survey of 1,571 dog owners found that 68% of dogs eat grass regularly, with only 8% showing signs of illness beforehand and only 22% vomiting afterward. A 2019 follow-up study by Dr. Christiane Becker at the University of New England confirmed these findings with direct behavioral observation. Grass eating occurred predominantly in healthy dogs and was not preceded by illness symptoms. Researchers now recognize grass consumption as normal dietary behavior, possibly providing fiber or micronutrients, or simply because dogs find it palatable. Most dogs never vomit after grass consumption, yet veterinary clinic handouts in 2021 still listed illness as the probable cause in materials distributed by practices in 23 states. This matters because millions of dog owners misinterpret normal dietary behavior as a symptom requiring intervention, leading to unnecessary veterinary visits and anxiety about routine canine behavior. Veterinary medicine documented the actual pattern in 2008, yet client education materials in 2024 continue teaching the illness explanation, a 16-year gap between research and practice guidance. How many other routine animal behaviors are we pathologizing with explanations invented before anyone measured the actual frequency in healthy populations? When veterinary education operates on clinical observation bias rather than controlled behavioral surveys, we're teaching pet owners to see illness in normal species, typical behavior patterns that have never required treatment.